the one in which you wouldn't believe what the monster is. Welcome to Supernatural First Watch Podcast, a rewatch podcast designed to be spoiler-free and enjoyed as if it's your first watch. I'm your host, a self-proclaimed sci-fi and fantasy fan, and previously on Supernatural, we had nightmares, where Sam was experiencing nightmares that were coming true. And now, we're continuing on into the Benders. So, let's dive in. Our big picture view is that Sam and Dean are going to head to Minnesota, where a young boy has witnessed a man vanish into thin air. Upon searching for clues, Sam is abducted, and it leads to a shocking discovery. So, let's dive in deep. In this episode, we are open on Hibbing, Minnesota, where a kid is watching a scary movie, and he sees something out the window. Of course, something creepy happens on screen, and then off screen we also see the man get dragged away. He almost vanishes into thin air. Cut to Dean and Sam are already on the case. We don't see how they found this particular one, and they're interviewing the mom and her son. They're not really getting anywhere. And then Dean is able to get some personal time with the child and bond over Godzilla. He explains that he heard a whining growl, but they can't get much more from him. When in doubt, head to the bar. The brothers discuss the case at a bar and are trying to figure out what the creature might be. The location is in the journal, as a potential hotspot location, and while Dean heads to the bathroom, Sam goes outside to wait for him, and he hears something in the parking lot, and he also vanishes from thin air. When Dean comes out, he sees that Sam's papers are still on the car, but Sam is nowhere to be found. So he heads to the actual police to try and find out if he can get access to a camera he notices in the parking lot. The deputy goes to investigate, but she doesn't want to take Dean along, and he explains that he is family and he really, really wants to tag along, and he's going to anyway. So he gives her the puppy dog eyes, and it seems she's going to cave. Sam wakes up and he's locked in a cage, but notices the local man missing, whereas Dean gets information from the cop that there was a car that pulled away just after Sam left the bar. He realizes that the whiny growl the boy heard was actually the rumble of an engine, and son of a bitch, he realizes Sam was probably in the car. While driving around trying to get clues, the deputy realizes that the badge Dean gave her is actually stolen. And instead of trying to immediately take him in, Dean pleads with her to please help him find his family. He even volunteers so far as to get arrested after they find Sam. The plea is heartfelt enough, and she agrees to keep him around as she heads out to try and find the car. Cut back to Sam, still in the cage, and he's desperately trying to pull on anything to make it move when the cage pops open. For the other guy, who breaks out, Sam encourages him that it is too easy, but he doesn't listen. Jenkins, the man who they came to investigate, breaks out, grabs a knife, and claims that he will be back to get Sam out too. Of course, he quickly comes across two men also armed who hunt him down rather quickly, and they murder him as Sam hears the death. Essentially, it's a family that ascribes to The Most Dangerous Game. It's an old play written in the 1900s about a group of men who've determined that they've hunted everything there is to hunt in the world, and the most dangerous game, and therefore the most entertaining, is to hunt humans. It's morning now, and Dean is still with the cop, and he asks her why she's still letting him tag along and hasn't turned him in. She reveals her brother is one of the many who have disappeared over the years, and she tracks the truck down to a very ramshackle-looking house. But even though she's been helpful and willing to let Dean tag along, he's not going to tag along all the way to an interview. So she cuffs him to the squad car and goes to investigate. After knocking on the door, a very, very, very creepy girl comes out who is dirty Miss wearing misshapen clothes and has horrible teeth and is acting very, very strange with the cop. She tries to she tries to strike up a rapport in a simple conversation with the little girl, but she is not engaging. She mentions that her mother is dead, and then she asks for her father, and she turns to get a shovel to the face. Dean, meanwhile, is trying to break out of the cuffs. He manages to maneuver enough to grab the car antenna and pick the handcuffs before the family discovers him, and they approach in the car to drive the car away. The cop, Kathleen, is now locked up in a cell right next to Sam when Dean breaks in. While the others are distracted with getting rid of the car, Dean manages to go exactly to where his brother and Kathleen are locked up. He goes in search of a key. After Sam explains that that's what will open the doors, he heads upstairs and finds all sorts of creepy, gruesome things. In a basement, he finds jars full of human paraphernalia, including ears and teeth. As he heads upstairs, he finds walls covered in photographs of the brothers that we saw in front of their human kills. As he continues to try and find the key, he actually hits a wind chime, which is made of human jaw bones, and a phonograph is playing while somebody is sawing away in another room. He's desperately trying to keep quiet so as not to raise attention of the man in the other room, when he finds the keys but is caught out by the little girl. He tries to once again appeal to her and just speak quietly, but of course she is just as disturbed as the rest of her family and manages to pin him to the wall with a knife through his jacket. He puts up a really good fight against the brothers who've come back in, and then gets a frying pan to the skull from Daddy Dearest. They tie Dean up but don't throw him into the cage, and instead decide to monologue about their very creepy pastime. They want Dean to choose between the cop and Sam. Of course, he refuses to do so, and then eventually he is coerced after a whole bunch of punches while tied to a chair to pick Sam first, probably expecting that Sam has a better chance of fighting against these people than Kathleen. Of course, they have no intention of letting Sam out. They decide they're going to shoot them both. But when Sam is let out of his cage, he has managed to grab a piece of metal from nearby his cage and throws it at him. There's a very slow hunt in the dark, and they manage to lock some of the brothers up in the cage where they were sequestered. The brothers are still hunting down Sam when Kathleen gets the jump on one of the brothers, but he manages to overpower her. He's about to shoot her when she gets saved in the tussle. Through a bunch of maneuvering, they manage to get one of the brothers to shoot his father, and they give Kathleen the gun to cover the father while they try and round up the rest of the siblings, leaving her alone, where she asks the question about why he did it and explains that one of the victims was her brother, and he laughs, and we cut to the outside where we hear a gunshot go off. She claims that he was trying to escape and she had to shoot him, and explains that the cops are about to arrive to this remote location and they should leave before they get there. Pretty implied that the brothers are aware she most likely shot an unarmed man, and she's aware that they should not be there and are wanted by the police. So when she encourages them to leave, and they take her up on it. Of course, they're like, wait a minute, we don't have wheels. How are we supposed to get there? And she says, you better start walking. So she's going to let them escape, but she's not going to make it too easy for them. So there is no local legend here, except a short shot of a boy watching a horror film and then experiencing the weird noise and somebody disappearing from the parking lot, enough so that they are actually willing to talk to the police. We don't have any supernatural baddies mentioned either, simply because they're not really sure what could have happened. And we get brief mentions, but no details on others, so I'm going to skip over it here. How to kill it? The better question is, should we kill it? Once again, the gray line in hunting comes up, because the question is, these are humans doing a human thing, which is that they have determined, and it is heavily implied, that this entire family has been doing this for generations, that the most dangerous game is to hunt humans, and they have trained their children and then trained their children's children to keep hunting people in the woods. Of course, which begs the question, where do these children come from? How do they find the people to carry children? How do they find somebody to become another parent to these children? Those are all questions that I want to know, but not really, because it's just creepy. And the gray line, of course, as well, as Sam does not want to shoot the man once they're no longer fighting. So he's willing to shoot the brothers in defense of himself, obviously, and to be able to break out. But once they're down, once they're no longer, quote unquote, a threat at that time, he leaves them to be taken in by the police, essentially. But the cop, in this instance, determines that they have no remorse and it was just a game to them. And of course, he is responsible for the death of her brother. So, of course, we don't see the actual footage of whether or not the father of the Benders was escaping, but it's heavily implied, of course, that he was not escaping actively. She just decided to shoot him anyway. So how do you kill a human? Shotgun to the chest usually works pretty well. The body count, the only ones that we see on screen are the man from the opening, Jenkins, who does die, and then, of course, Pa Bender is killed fleeing custody, as it were. But I don't believe any of the brothers are implied to have died in the scuffle. Of course, a whole bunch of other people have died prior to this, as they have quite the missing persons problem in this area of Minnesota. You've seen them before. You might recognize the deputy as Jessica Steen, who is a familiar face to Stargate Atlantis fans and also to Earth 2 fans. And then, of course, we have our huge selection of local Canadian actors. So this episode is creepy in my mind on a whole lot of levels, and I really can't come up with a better word other than it's creepy, especially since you got to wonder what causes something like this to happen. It's heavily implied through conversation that the children are trained to do this. So they're raised as this is normal. But for how many generations has this been happening? And according to IMDb, this story is actually most likely based on a family that ran a hotel in the 1800s in Kansas. When they dug up the backyard, they were able to identify 11 bodies, including that of an infant, of guests who would stay at the hotel and get murdered by the family, but they expect the number to be at least 3 times as high, considering the high number of missing persons filed in the area around the same time. So this story, while not a supernatural legend, is actually based on the story of a real family in the United States who decided that the most fun they can have is to hunt down other human beings. So, there's a whole bunch of things that add to the creepy factor to this, including the various jars full of human remains, the wind chimes made out of human jawbones, the fact that they take Polaroids with their kills laid out, similar to how a lot of hunters will take images of their big hunting game that they've managed to kill, especially in the early 1900s when hunting on the African savanna was a huge thing. Of course, luxury hunting still exists nowadays, and it's purely for fun. So where is that gray line? And this episode is actually more disturbing because it came to their attention for 2 reasons. Number one is that they saw, it is assumed, of course, because we don't actually see them research this one, but it's assumed that they read somewhere about the disappearance without a trace of the man, which brought them to this location, but also the fact that it was noted in the journal as a place where there is some sort of abduction legend, if you will, going on. So it was enough of an impact that John had noted it down in his journal. Of course, we find out it's nothing supernatural. It's just humans, and that makes it even more disturbing. And it ties into that idea of how easy it is for people to ignore what they don't know. So in other episodes, we've seen people refuse to acknowledge that what they saw is real. We've seen episodes where no one would believe me. Those types of phrases get thrown around. We've seen the episode with Skin where Sam's friend knew that her brother was not responsible, but also had a hard time believing that it was some sort of supernatural creature until she was attacked by it herself. But it also shows that something they thought might have been supernatural, like the growl that the child mentions hearing, Dean realizes could have just been the growl of an engine. If you'll note, so far, we actually hear the engine idling quite a lot in the car that they're driving, the Chevy Impala, and it could be described as a growl, a growling engine noise. So that idea of, when do you know if what you're hearing is actually what you're hearing, what you're seeing, is it strange? Is it abnormal? Or is it something strange or abnormal to us because of the circumstances, such as it's dark, it's late at night, everything seems different without the sunlight. No real technology in the new age comments here, or not a lot of development either between the two brothers for the family business. Mostly we just have a very disturbing episode. Trope-tastic, of course, is that a motif of a child witnessing something that no one believes. Also, we have the motif of somebody, from afar we see in the shadows sulking, and then, of course, they disappear. But in this instance, it's not something strange. It's not something otherworldly. It's simply a bunch of people who are kidnapping people from a parking lot and driving off with them and managing to avoid detection from other humans. So in general, this actually has quite a high rating on IMDb. It's got a rating of an 8.2, and I personally don't feel it deserves that. Partially because we don't really get any story development here. Obviously, the point they're trying to make, I would say, is that sometimes the creepiest thing in the world is other people. It's not some sort of creature, which I understand. But I think there would have been... The whole episode just feels weirdly paced. It feels strange, especially the piece where the cop decides to shoot the person, because she does have the ability to put him on trial. And, that's another gray area. I think overall, though, is that there was no nuance to the story, which is kind of what I don't like about it. It's very clear that the family is cuckoo. The family is bonkers. They have lost their marbles, and they have no remorse. They're not doing it because they feel they have to be compelled to do it. They're clearly enjoying themselves. There's no sympathy, if you will, for the family at all. Not even for the little girl. So, I mean, she's 13, so obviously she was raised in this, and you can make the argument that, well, she never knew another life. But it's also clear that she has no empathy, and she actually knows how to play her role. She smoothly manages to start and engage both Dean and Kathleen in conversation long enough for somebody else to attack them. And it's very clear that she finds it funny and she finds it amusing, which also just adds to the creep factor I find with this episode. If I weren't doing this podcast, I would have given it a skip. I do not like it. I don't find it to be a compelling episode. Even the earlier episodes, such as Bloody Mary or Wendigo, they're not the greatest amount of cinematography, but at least they established who our characters were. They played into a legend. They told a story. I find this one dives a little bit too deep into just making everything creepy and disturbing, and doesn't really necessarily pull the story forward so much. I think there would have been a better way to frame it, even as a serial killer, of somebody who, has a psychology and has a reasoning for what they do. It looks like here, literally the only reasoning is they want to hunt and they just choose people at random, and there is no storyline behind why they do what they do. And of course, I'm sure there are people out there who exist like this, but overall, it doesn't feel as strong, especially after we had such a great episode where we dived into what's going on with Sam and his visions. We learned about the history of Dean with Cassie. We have reestablished contact with their father. All of these things, they were such a great momentum builder. And then we have this episode, which just kind of feels like we're screeching the brakes and not a lot more is going on. So overall, I usually recommend giving this episode a skip. Not usually. I mean, I would recommend giving this episode a skip. And I don't really have a lot of questions to contemplate for the future. I don't think that the police officer is going to report that she saw Dean. I don't think that it's going to cause any sort of issues with them in their journey so far. I doubt they're going to give too much thought to what happened here, except other than to say, make sure not to get kidnapped from each other. That's all we have for the Benders, which it's implied that the Benders is the family. No questions really are brought up from this outing, not even what are other potential creatures, because we don't really get a lot of detail about any of the others they think might happen. So up next, we have Shadow. So we'll connect again on the road soon in Shadow, and you're listening to Supernatural First Watch Podcast. Don't miss out on future episodes. Subscribe to the show in your podcast player of choice. Got opinions, theories, or comments to share about the road so far? Send in your thoughts at the email in the show notes. Want to help support the podcast? Want fun behind-the-scenes looks, extra episodes, and a shout-out on the show? Subscribe to the Patreon, also listed in the show notes. And I will see you on the road next time in Shadow.